Thank you for having us, I suppose. Steve and Zach, right? I suppose we'll begin with kind of just jumping into the origin story, how you guys started out. If I'm not mistaken, Steve, you mentioned that you've been in the industry for
a long time.
Years, a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. What's your background and how did you get into the fintech space?
Sure. In some ways, I'm old tech.
Old tech.
So prior to coming to live in Malaysia, I was in Hong Kong for about 17 years. I was the managing director for Unisys in Hong Kong. And at that time, we were probably the largest company involved in check processing, payments and check processing.
Right.
I came to live in Malaysia in 2003, so I've been here for quite a long time. Initially with the intention of slowing down, but sort of found out I couldn't really slow down. And one of my companies here was involved with MEPS in 2010, 2011. But what MEPS wanted to do in 2010, 2011 is introduce what we now call as interbank direct debit, meaning using the direct debit mechanism, and the buyer could be in Maybank and the seller could be in CIMB. So my company produced a workflow system that banks could use. It was paper-based in that the authority that the buyer was giving to the seller was a signature on a piece of paper. Because it was a paper-based system, it sort of failed. But that we launched in 2010, 2011. All the major banks in the country were using that system. Some 4 years ago, I went to what was then called MyClear, it's now PayNet, and said, look, we're not really doing a lot with this type of mechanism. Why don't we try and remove the paper and bring an electronic version of that authority in? And unfortunately, my proposal at the time sort of got rejected.
You were way ahead of your time.
You could say that. But we were lucky. About 2 years ago, the government offered borrowers of PTPTN the opportunity to pay by direct debit, and in return they get a 10% discount. So literally overnight,
that was when it kicked off.
Overnight, pieces of paper were sent into MyClear in the thousands. And there weren't enough people, there weren't enough scanners, and the system just ground to a halt.
Yeah.
So we were lucky, right place, right time. At that point, our partner, MyClear / PayNet, called up and said that proposal that you had offered us 2 years ago to do this electronically, could we still do it? Of course we said yes. So we modified our back-end system, which sits in PayNet. PTPTN themselves did the front end for the student loan system. And as I was doing this work with my colleagues in the office here, I said, we should take this now and give it to the masses. When I say the masses, I don't necessarily mean the public. I mean the masses of SMEs. We've got 1 million SMEs in the country. Let's give those SMEs the chance to use this payment mechanism.
Zach, I'm going to bring you into this. You've had a bit of experience in the UK as well. What's your background like?
That's right. Well, actually, by training, I'm actually a lawyer.
Right.
I did an undergrad in law, and then I got called to the bar and everything. Up until that point, and then I was out of there. No more lawyer. But anyways, no, I worked in tech in the UK for a little bit, and in banking. So sort of you put the 2 and 2 together, you get fintech. Just following on from what Steve said, payment systems or payment options such as direct debit are super established in the UK. Super established, and I only really came back to KL about a year and a half ago. And when I came back initially, it's sort of when payment systems such as My Debit were coming out.
That was just starting out. Yeah.
That's right, and we started to see things such as e-wallets come up. But when we talk about recurring payments and those subscription regular payments that you have, it's still hard to make those payments. And sort of there was a frustration as a consumer here. When Steve approached me with the idea to really take direct debit, particularly online direct debit, to the masses, the SME community in Malaysia, jumped at that opportunity, because I've seen how widely used it is in other parts of the world. And I think there's no reason why Malaysia can't be the same.
I'm going to jump into the education. Sure. Let's talk about the business itself. So we've kind of just touched around the origin story. tell us a little bit about the business and how it works and who your clients are, who you target.
Sure. I mean, I think in terms of who we target, our primary focus, as we've touched on a few times in this interview, is the SME market. Those who traditionally have been underserved by the traditional financial services, the banks. And why that is generally speaking, direct debit up until now has been a paper process. A paper process which requires a lot of admin, it requires software to be built and large teams to administer it, which means it's only available to the large companies, the corporates, and those guys who've got big teams who can facilitate it. What it's meant is that for the small guys, the SMEs, having the ability to take control of their cash flow, manage their payments, make sure they get paid on time, it's never really been available to them. It's been too difficult to administer. So those are the guys we're targeting. It's too expensive for the banks to go in and try and acquire these guys. So that's what we do. So we're very focused on the SME segment, particularly those industries which have a recurring business model. For example, subscription-based, regular billing, etc. And we're seeing, over the past few years, this term, the subscription economy, has been thrown around. I think we're seeing a lot of new business models and a lot of businesses that have signed up to us who very much fit that mold. They want to give consumers more choice, more affordability, break down costs, and we're complementary to that.
So Steve, if say I've got a gym and then I'm struggling to kind of get my customers to pay on time or whatever, right? So this would be the perfect solution for me then, I suppose.
The gyms is a great industry for us.
Yeah.
There are about 2,000 small gyms in Malaysia, so it's not a small industry. But many of these small guys have one, maybe two studios. They don't employ accountants, they probably don't have admin. They can use our service, which is all hosted in the cloud. They may have 100 to 200 regular members. The average fee could be 150, 160 a month, but often the member will maybe take an hour's special class, it's another 40 ringgit. So where the amount is variable, that's where direct debit really kicks in. And for a small guy like that, we completely automate the collection process.
So for the benefit of our listeners, how exactly, from a technical sense, how does it work? Just kind of summarize it for us.
Yeah, sure. So just now we spoke about this paper form.
Yeah.
Now we move to a completely online digital form. Very similar fields to the paper form: name, address, the customer would pick their bank account, etc. So it's an online form, and basically the customer will then authorize that form, give permission to the business to collect from that account by doing a 1 ringgit online banking transaction.
Right.
I'm sure many of your listeners will be familiar with FPX, and we ride on that infrastructure. We do a 1 ringgit FPX transaction, which basically validates the bank account is real and authorizes the regular payments. And so that's the authorization part. Then sort of in the back end, that's the end of the end consumer
so that's
experience.
it. So for
an end customer,
End customer, I don't need to think about anything else.
That's right.
That's what you do.
But sort of the real magic happens in the background. For a business, we automate the whole process of triggering these collections. Setting the relevant data to that banks in an automated fashion. Whereby it just, if you're billing on the 1st of every month, let's say, we'll send those the messages out to make that happen. And then when obviously payment has happened, we receive data back from the bank saying these transactions are successful, these are unsuccessful, and also then through our APIs we can also integrate that to a merchant's internal systems, such as their accounting or billing subscription systems.
So it goes back to that as well.
That's right. So from end-to-end authorization, collection, reconciliation, all completely handled by us, all completely automated.
So from the merchant that you come in to say, you've been running for about a year?
Yeah.
Yep. how's that? If you don't mind just sharing a little bit.
Sure. So yeah, we just celebrated our first birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're at the nappies now.
Yeah, I know. We're starting to learn how to walk. A few weeks ago. So sort of in our first year of operations, we have just over 100 businesses who are using our system. We processed close to 50 million ringgit worth of transactions in our first year in terms of value, which we think, for a first year is pretty good. So in our first year, we've laid our foundations, really validated the product works, also got got some VC funding as well, which further validates what it is we're doing.
Yeah.
And now this year is all about scaling up the business. We've got some pretty aggressive targets in our minds that we want to hit.
What are your distribution strategy? Do you have sales team and kind of going out?
Yeah, so the majority of the funding that we received is to build a sales team. It's we've up until this point we've operated a pretty small, lean sales and marketing team, but we're looking to really grow that out. And we are hiring at the moment for those positions. If any of your viewers are interested, but
we're hiring.
We are hiring, but yeah, mainly for those. We're building a sales team.
So Steve, as the I suppose the godfather of tech,
Go on, Steve.
how is it like? Kind of. Are you involved on a day-to-day basis, operationally and all that? And then how do you kind of impart your wisdom to the team?
I still get out of bed and I come to work, so that part still exists. Zach and I, we're family friends, and in fact, my kids went to the same school as Zach did. There's a little difference in age between us. If maybe you noticed that, I'm not
really?
sure.
Really?
But fintech is a young industry. By definition, it's a young industry. So Zach is. We've said that we're hiring the younger generation of marketing and salespeople and development staff, by the way, that are keen to join something which is very exciting. Fintech, without a doubt, is very exciting. It's the place to be right now. Lots of VC money coming in, and it just is an exciting place to be.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for your time, Zach. We'll probably kind of touch base with you guys again.
As we go through the journey.
We go through,
yeah. Excellent.